school money car frostbite. The frostbite fear seemed more immediate, though she was reluctant to admit that the more she worried about it, the warmer she felt. Maybe her heart was beating faster, or her walking pace was picking up as the sun began to set, and she realized that all of her whining about dying in the cold might come true if she didn't hurry the hell up. Allison reached out, bracing herself against a tree so that she could pick her way past a tangle of roots that dipped into the water. The bark was wet and spongy under her fingertips. A customer had sent back a hamburger at lunch today because he said the bun was too spongy. He was a big, gruff man in full hunting gear, not the sort of guy you'd expect to use a delicate word like spongy. He had flirted with her, and she had flirted back, and then when he left, there was a 50-cent tip on his $10 meal. He'd actually winked at her as he walked out the door like he was doing her a favor. She wasn't sure how much more of this she could take. Maybe her grandmother had been right. Girls like Allison didn't go to college. They found work at the tire factory, met a guy, got pregnant, got married, had a couple of more kids, then got divorced, sometimes in that order, sometimes not. If she was lucky, the guy didn't beat her much. Was that the kind of life Allison wanted for herself? It was the kind of life that was written in her blood. Her mother had lived it. Her grandmother had lived it. Her Aunt Sheila had lived it until she pulled a shotgun on her Uncle Boyd and nearly took his head off. All three of the Spooner women had, at some point or another, thrown away everything for a worthless man. Allison had watched it happen to her mother so often that by the time Judy Spooner was in the hospital for the last time, every bit of her insides eaten away from the cancer, all Allison could reflect on was the waste of her mother's life. She'd even looked wasted. At 38 years old, her hair was thinning and nearly all gray. Her skin was faded. Her hands were clawed from working at the tire factory, picking tires off the belt, pressure testing them, putting them back on the belt, then picking up the next tire, then again and again over 200 times a day, so that every joint in her body ached by the time she crawled into bed at night. 38 years old, and she welcomed the cancer, welcomed the relief. One of the last things Judy had told Allison was that she was glad to be dying, glad that she didn't have to be alone anymore. Judy Spooner believed in heaven and redemption. She believed that one day streets of gold and many mansions would replace her gravel drive and trailer park existence. All Allison believed was that she had never been enough for her mother. Judy's glass was perpetually half empty, and all the love Allison poured into her over the years would never fill her mother up. Judy was too far drawn into the muck of her dead-end job, the muck of one worthless man after another, the muck of a baby holding her down. College was going to be Allison's salvation. She was good at science. Looking at her family, it made no sense, but somehow she understood how chemicals worked. She understood at a basic level the synthesis of macromolecules. Her grasp of synthetic polymers came hand in glove. Most important, she knew how to study. She knew that somewhere on Earth there was always a book with an answer in it, and the best way to find that answer was to read every book you could get your hands on. By her senior year in high school, she had managed to stay away from the boys and the drinking and the meth that had ruined just about every girl her age in her small hometown of Elba, Alabama. She wasn't going to end up being one of those soulless, washed-out girls who worked the night shift and smoked cools because they were elegant. She wasn't going to end up with 3 kids by 3 different men before she hit 30. She wasn't going to ever wake up one morning unable to open her eyes because some man's fist had beaten them shut the night before. She wasn't going to end up dead and alone in a hospital bed like her mother. At least, that's what she'd been thinking when she left Elba 3 years ago. Mr. Mayweather, her science teacher, had pulled every string he could grab to get her enrolled in a good college. He wanted her to get as far away from Elba as possible. He wanted her to have a future. Grant Tech was in Georgia, and it wasn't far away in miles so much as far away in feeling. The college was enormous compared to her high school, which had a graduating class of 29 people. Allison had spent her first week on campus wondering how it was